first Anglo-Saxon kingdom was Kent. The name Kent is thought to come from a Celtic word. It likely means coastal district, corner land, or land on the edge. The story goes that a king of the Britons named Vortigern was having trouble with raids by the Picts and Scots. He therefore asked for help from some Jute mercenaries led by Hengist and Horsa. The British writer Gildas said that the proud and foolish British kings were so blinded that in trying to protect his country, he sealed its doom by inviting in the fierce and godless Saxons, like wolves into a sheepfold. He called them a people hated by both God and men. According to Gildas, nothing was ever more harmful or unlucky for Britain. After Hengist and Horsa defeated the raiders, they demanded more payment, but Vortigern couldn't afford to pay them. As a result, the Germanic mercenaries began taking land as their reward. The first Anglo-Saxon kingdom, Kent, was founded around the year 450. However, its rulers were only petty kings, and Vortigern still claimed the land known as Cantium. More and more Germanic warriors gathered behind the two brothers, and by the year 500, the southwestern part of Britannia was firmly under Anglo-Saxon control. However, there is evidence that the Anglo-Saxons had been invading Britannia even during the time of Roman rule. Vortigern was eventually overthrown by the Britons, who were furious about the arrival of the Anglo-Saxons. He was replaced by one of his 4 sons, Vortimer. Hengist and Horsa fought against Vortimer, most notably in the Battle of Aylesford in 455. During the battle, Horsa was killed, leaving Hengist angry and seeking revenge. According to the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, the Jutes, led by Hengist and his son Oisc, won a decisive victory despite Horsa's death. They met again in 457 AD at the Battle of Crayford, where Hengist and Oisc forced the Britons to flee to London. This was followed by 2 more battles, one of which was known as Wippodus Flayot, which eventually led to the Britons surrendering Kent to the Jutes. According to the Historia Britonum, a highly unreliable source, Vortimer managed to drive the Jutes all the way to the western side of the Isle of Man. There was also a marriage between Vortigern and Rowena, the daughter of Hengist, either as a gesture of peace, due to drunkenness, or because of Vortigern's desire for her. Rowena married Vortigern and later poisoned Vortimer, an act of betrayal against the Britons. The Britons were so sorrowful over the death of their king that they carried his body from town to town on his shield in mourning. Vortigern, however, did not grieve. Instead, he reclaimed the title of king by promising he could bring peace with the Anglo-Saxons. Legend has it that there was a peace treaty banquet between Vortigern and Hengist, possibly held near Stonehenge. The Jutes drew their hidden long knives, known as seaxes, and killed all the Britons while feasting with them, as Hengist had still not forgiven the death of his brother. This legend is known as the Treason of the Long Knives. Some say that Stonehenge was built on the site where this betrayal happened, as a memorial by a remorseful Hengist. Ambrosius Aurelianus then became the new king of the Britons. Over time, he came to be known as, or was represented as, Uther Pendragon. There is no contemporary evidence for any of this, only stories and legends. Personally, I consider these accounts to be a form of evidence, as they are all we have, and I believe there is often some truth in stories and anecdotal records. On the other hand, many people argue that the origins of Kent, or the first Anglo-Saxon arrivals, are ultimately unknowable, and that we should not place trust in anecdotal evidence or folklore. No matter which version of the events is true, if any, the outcome was the same. Hengist and his son Oisc became the kings of Kent, the first legendary Anglo-Saxon kings. Their reign laid the foundations for future Anglo-Saxon invasions. Francis Pryor, an archaeologist, disputes the idea of an aggressive invasion, stating that there is no archaeological evidence to support such an event. Instead, he suggests that the Britons may have simply adopted Anglo-Saxon culture without a significant influx of new people. According to Pryor, cultural change does not necessarily require a large population movement. The Anglo-Saxons may have been only a small ruling elite, or the Britons may have gradually shifted their culture over time. Others argue that DNA evidence does show at least some migration of Anglo-Saxons. They suggest that the lack of archaeological evidence for an invasion could be due to a lowering of the Briton population after the Romans left, combined with the fact that the Anglo-Saxons primarily built with wood, which leaves fewer traces behind. Although no written evidence has been found, archaeological evidence suggests that the Saxons may have also settled in Kent, north of the River Medway. However, they were either soon driven out or integrated into the more dominant Jutish culture. Alternatively, this archaeological evidence may simply reflect the high degree of similarity between Jutish and Saxon cultures. What we do know for certain is that, over the years, Kent engaged in trade with the continent, especially with the Frankish Empire. Some scholars speculate that Kent may even have been considered part of the Frankish sphere of influence. In any case, Kent soon became the wealthiest part of Britain, largely due to its active trade with the continent. Kent was also the first Anglo-Saxon territory to become a kingdom and developed a wealthy ruling class more quickly than the other tribes on the island. Kent would later thrive as the centre of Roman Catholicism in England, even establishing abbeys beyond its own borders. During the 7th century, Kent played a leading role in the Christianisation of the Anglo-Saxon world, helping to bring the various tribes under the influence of Roman religious authority, and reforming a Celtic Christianity to align with Roman teachings. Even as Kent's political power was eventually overtaken by Northumbria, it remained highly respected and held significant prestige. This was due to its status as the first Anglo-Saxon kingdom, its possession of Canterbury Cathedral, and its role as the birthplace of Roman Christianity in England. Kent began to decline as a major power following the outbreak of the Great Plague in 664. It is possible that the kingdom lost 2 kings in quick succession, and many villages were abandoned due to the widespread impact of the disease. Further internal conflict within the Kentish royal dynasties, including acts of kinslaying, stripped the kingdom of its moral authority and significantly weakened its religious influence. Other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms took advantage of this instability, leading to further devastation and the erosion of Kent's dominance. The legend of the White and Red Dragons symbolises the struggle between the Anglo-Saxons and the Britons, the native Celtic inhabitants of Britain, during the Anglo-Saxon invasions. The Red Dragon represents the native Britons, while the White Dragon represents the Anglo-Saxons. The Red Dragon was likely used by native Britons as a military emblem, possibly as early as the Roman period. The White Dragon appears in later medieval texts and heraldry as a symbol of the Anglo-Saxons, often in contrast to the Red Dragon. According to legend, most famously recorded in Geoffrey of Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain, 2 dragons were discovered fighting beneath Dinas Emrys, a hill in Wales. The Red Dragon initially struggled but eventually defeated the White Dragon, symbolising the Britons' resistance against the Anglo-Saxon invaders. The Red Dragon later became a national symbol of Wales, while the legend itself has often been interpreted as a prophecy of the eventual triumph of the Britons, later the Welsh, over their oppressors, even though the Anglo-Saxons ultimately came to dominate much of Britain. The term Wales originates from the Anglo-Saxon word wal, meaning foreigner. Over time, Wal came to refer specifically to the Britons and anything associated with them. Meanwhile, the Welsh word for England is lega, which may be translated as either lost lands or warriors, though its exact meaning remains uncertain. Be sure to check out my other channel, History Sticks, for the complete, longer and comprehensive video.